Zola came home after another chemotherapy session, hoping to lie down and rest in her own bed. Instead, she stopped at the front door when she saw another woman's shoes.
What's going on?
"This is Kiara," Adrian said.
This is Kiara.
She'll be living here from now on.
You understand, don't you?
You understand, don't you?
Sick.
You're sick. As he spoke, he placed the house keys into Kiara's hand. Adrian's mother pulled Zola's suitcase across the floor and dragged it into the garage. "There's an old mattress out there," she said. "You'll manage." His sister carried Kiara's dresses into the master bedroom, the room that had always belonged to Zola. By the end of the day, the woman fighting for her life was sleeping in her own garage. None of them ever wondered why the same lawyer called her every single day. "Don't make this difficult, Zola," Adrian said. "It's better for both of us if we end this peacefully." His mother, Gloria, finished making the bed with fresh sheets. "My dear," she said, "being heartbroken won't change reality. At least you still have a place to stay." Standing in the doorway of Zola's old bedroom, Kiara smiled as she looked around. "This house is beautiful," she said. "It deserves someone who can actually enjoy it." Adrian Vane believed he had finally gotten rid of the burden holding him back. He looked at his wife of 9 years. She was thin. Her head was covered with a scarf after losing her hair. A bandage was still taped to her arm from treatment. To him, she was no longer worth fighting for. His mother approved of everything. His sister helped him. His mistress laughed. None of them knew they were throwing out the woman who quietly owned everything they valued. That night, lying on the cold garage floor, Zola held a sealed envelope in her hands. It was from her father. Written neatly across the front were the words, "Open this when they show you who they really are." She gently ran her thumb across the seal. But she didn't open it. Not yet. She didn't cry. Before we continue, if you enjoy emotional stories with shocking twists, don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more unforgettable stories. Also, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. Now, here's what Adrian didn't know. The woman sleeping on that old garage mattress was richer than every man working in his company put together. Her father, Cornelius Bell, had quietly built a fortune so large that even his own son-in-law never knew it existed. Before he died, he left everything to one person. Zola. She was already a billionaire. She simply had never needed to live like one. But Adrian knew nothing about that. And that's where this story truly begins. 6 years earlier, Zola believed she had married a good man. Adrian was ambitious back then, but his ambition looked like hope instead of greed. Zola worked as a children's nurse. She spent her nights comforting frightened little patients. When she came home, she would sit beside Adrian and listen as he talked about the successful man he wanted to become. She never told him how wealthy her family was. Her father had raised her differently. "Let people love you for who you are," Cornelius always said. "Money is a test. Watch carefully to see who passes." So Zola chose a simple life. She kept working. She let Adrian believe they were building their future together through his hard work alone. Then her father became seriously ill. She left her nursing job to take care of him. She learned every medicine he needed. She stayed awake through long nights when his pain refused to let him sleep. Adrian hardly visited. "Someone has to keep working," he always said. His mother, Gloria, was even more direct. "Nursing is a nice job, Zola," she said. "But people like you never become important." Zola never argued. She simply held her father's hand. Before Cornelius died, he placed the sealed envelope into her hand. "Everything I've built belongs to you now," he said softly. "But keep it secret for a little longer. When people think you have nothing, that's when they show you who they really are." He smiled, looking tired and weak. "When they finally show you their true faces, open this." A few moments later, he was gone. 2 years passed. Then Zola started feeling tired all the time. She went for medical tests. Not long after, she heard the one word everyone fears. Cancer. When she told Adrian, his face didn't fill with sadness. Instead, she saw him thinking. Calculating. She never forgot that look. Chemotherapy began. Each treatment took something away from her. After the first round, she spent 2 days lying on the bathroom floor. She was too weak to stand without the room spinning. She started keeping crackers beside her bed and a bucket close by because of the constant sickness. During the 3rd week, her hair began falling out. She was standing in the shower when a handful came away in her fingers. She stared at it for a long time. Then she picked up a pair of clippers and shaved off the rest herself. She did it alone. There was no one in the house who cared enough to stand beside her or even hand her a towel. She never made a sound. The treatments drained everything from her. Her whole body ached. Some nights she was so cold that she slept wearing her coat. Other nights she was so weak she couldn't even lift her head from the pillow. And Adrian was almost never home. His career was taking off. Halcyon Group had trusted him with the biggest business deal of his life. It was a merger with Meridian Holdings. The kind of deal that could make him rich and powerful. Every day he came home later than the day before. One name kept coming up in his conversations. Kiera. His assistant. She's brilliant, he often said. She works hard. She understands business. Zola noticed the little things. Sick people notice everything because they have so much time to watch. She noticed the second phone he always kept face down. She noticed a perfume on his shirt that wasn't hers. She saw a photo from a company dinner. In it, a young woman stood much too close to Adrian. Her hand rested comfortably on his arm, as though it belonged there. Zola said nothing. She simply watched. She had enough money to buy his entire company and dismiss him before lunchtime. But she didn't. Her father's words stayed in her heart. Watch who passes. One night she woke with a high fever. She called Adrian's name. He never answered. Instead, through the wall, she heard him laughing. Then she heard another woman laughing with him. Her hands shaking, Zola got out of bed, poured herself a glass of water, and slowly made her way back. That night, she finally understood what her marriage had become. There was no place in it for a sick wife. Then came the day Adrian moved Kiera into the house and sent Zola to live in the garage. That first week in the garage showed her exactly who they had become. The old mattress was thin and lay directly on the cold concrete floor. Every night, the cold rose through it and settled deep into her aching bones. She kept a bucket beside the door because the chemotherapy made her sick without warning. The garage had only one bare light bulb hanging from the ceiling. Through the wall, she could hear life going on inside the house that used to be hers. She heard Kiera laughing in her kitchen. She heard music playing. She heard glasses clinking during dinners that she should have been part of. One evening, feeling weak and shaking from another treatment, she walked to the door leading into the house to get some water. She looked through the small gap in the door. Adrian, Gloria, and Kiera were sitting around her dining table. The candles she had bought for special occasions were burning. Adrian lifted a bottle and poured wine into the crystal glasses from their wedding. To the new house, he said with a smile. And to getting rid of the old furniture, Kiera laughed. She may have meant the bedroom furniture. Or maybe she meant Zola. Gloria raised her glass. To my son finally living the life he deserves. None of them realized Zola was standing only a few feet away in the darkness. She was holding an empty container, too weak to lift it to the tap. Quietly, she turned around and went back to the garage. She didn't cry. The next morning, she stood by the small garage window. She watched Kiera walk outside wearing Zola's robe. A cup of coffee rested in her hand. She stretched in the morning sunshine as if she had lived there all her life. A moment later, Adrian walked out behind her. He leaned over and gently kissed the top of her head. "This feels right, doesn't it?" Kiera asked. "It feels like this house was always meant to be ours." "It was," Adrian replied without hesitation. Zola slowly let the curtain fall. Then she picked up her phone and called the only person she still trusted. The office of Elias Bankhole was quiet. It had the peaceful silence that often surrounds old wealth. When Zola arrived, he didn't stare at the scarf covering her head. He didn't look at the bruises on her arm from the treatments. Instead, he poured her a cup of tea and welcomed her with respect. He treated her like the most important person in the room. Because to him, she was Mrs. Bell, he said with a respectful nod. I've been waiting a long time for this call. You know what they've done to me? Zola asked quietly. I know everything, he replied. His jaw tightened for just a moment. And I also know who you really are. Something none of them knows. He placed a large folder on the desk and gently pushed it towards her. This is your father's estate. Everything. It's time you saw it for yourself. Zola opened the folder. She stared at the number printed on the page. For a long moment, she couldn't speak. That's the total. She finally whispered. Elias gave a small smile. No. That's only your cash assets. It doesn't include the Bell Trust. And that's where things become much more interesting. He turned his laptop around so she could see the screen. An ownership chart appeared. At the very top was the Bell Trust. Below it sat a company called Ashford Capital. And beneath that was another name she recognized immediately. Halcyon. The same company where Adrian worked. Next to it was one word. Merger. Zola froze. That's Adrian's deal. Elias nodded. Yes. The Bell Trust, through Ashford Capital, is financing Adrian's merger. Without Ashford's approval, that merger cannot happen. It falls apart. And you are the person who controls Ashford. He allowed the silence to settle between them. He didn't rush her. After a moment, Zola looked up. How much, Elias? I want the real number. He told her. She didn't blink. She simply lowered her eyes to the papers again. They threw all of this, she said softly, onto a garage floor. Don't do anything yet, Elias replied calmly. I'm protecting you. You deserve to face them at the right time, in the right place. Until then, keep watching. Write down everything they do. Let them continue showing you who they really are. Zola closed the folder. Then she went back home. Back to the garage. Back to the thin mattress. But this time, she returned as a billionaire. And while Adrian still saw a weak, sick woman sleeping in his garage, the audience knew the truth. The woman he had thrown away owned the very ground beneath his feet. What happened next was even more unbelievable. That same week, Adrian couldn't stop talking about his business deal. One afternoon, he even walked into the garage because the mobile signal was stronger there. He paced back and forth while talking on his phone, barely noticing that his sick wife was sitting only a few feet away. You don't understand what Ashford is, he said excitedly. They're old money. Real money. The Bell Trust is behind them, and hardly anyone even knows who controls it. But if they approve this merger, my future is made. Zola sat quietly on the mattress and listened. Her husband was praising the fortune that already belonged to her. Whoever controls that trust, Adrian continued, is the most important person in my life. I'd get down on my knees for them. He ended the call. Then he glanced at Zola as though she were nothing more than another old box in the garage. Try not to be sick in here while I'm working, he said before walking away. Zola remained silent. She had never wanted to laugh and cry at the same time as much as she did in that moment. Adrian said he would kneel for the owner of the Bell Trust. He just didn't know he already had. A similar moment came 2 days later. Adrian was outside in the garden, talking on the phone. The garage window was open, and Zola could hear every word. If I could just get one meeting with the Bell family, he said, or even one dinner with them, I'd give anything. They're the whole game. They're the people who decide my future. The person who already controlled his future was lying on a thin mattress in the garage. She was wearing her coat to keep warm. Her body was weak from chemotherapy. The medicine running through her veins made her feel sick every day. Quietly, she wrote his words in a notebook. Not because she wanted revenge. Because she was being patient. As Zola became weaker, the people inside the house became even crueler. Kiera started changing everything. She redecorated the bedroom. Then she posted a photo online of the newly painted room. The walls were now a soft gray. She added the caption. Some rooms feel better when the past is gone. Gloria left a comment underneath. A fresh start for a fresh family. Many of Adrian's colleagues liked the post. From the garage, Zola took a screenshot. She wrote the date underneath it in her notebook. Then Gloria crossed another line. One morning, Zola received a letter from the family's health insurance company. Her medical insurance had been cancelled. The form carried her signature. But she had never signed it. Someone had forged her name. They had removed her from the insurance that was paying for her chemotherapy. They wanted her treatments to stop. They wanted her to become a burden no one had to pay for. They wanted her to fade away quietly. Zola didn't argue with anyone. She simply took photographs of every document and sent them to Elias. After looking at them, he called her immediately. "This is no longer just cruelty," he said. "This is forgery. And forgery is a crime. Keep the original document somewhere safe." Zola underlined 2 words in her notebook. A crime. A few days later, she went for another chemotherapy session. While she sat quietly in the waiting room, one of the nurses who used to work with her came over and gently held her hand. "Sit down, sweetheart," the nurse said kindly. "I need to tell you something." Zola looked at her. "What is it?" The nurse smiled softly. "You're pregnant. It's still early, but you are." For a moment, everything around Zola seemed to spin. Pregnant. Fighting cancer. Sleeping in a garage. Married to a man who had forged her signature and was trying to let her die. She decided not to tell Adrian. But someone had already begun watching her more closely than she realized. 2 days later, there was a knock on the garage door. A man in a suit handed her a legal envelope. Inside were divorce papers. But that wasn't the worst part. Adrian wasn't just asking for a divorce. He was asking for full custody of their unborn baby. He claimed Zola was terminally ill and unable to provide a safe home for the child. He wanted the house. And now he wanted the baby before it was even born. Zola read every page slowly. Then she finally understood what was really happening. Adrian wasn't smart enough to plan all of this by himself. Someone else was guiding him. Someone was using him. She called Elias. Her voice shook only once. "He's trying to take my baby." Elias answered calmly. "Ask yourself one question. Who benefits if a court declares you an unfit mother? And ask yourself who has been standing beside Adrian, reading every document over his shoulder." Zola felt a chill run through her body. "Kiera." "Exactly," Elias replied. "Kiera was never really after your husband. She was after what your husband was chasing. She knows Adrian's merger depends on the Bell Trust. She wants to stand beside the man who stands beside that money. A dying wife with a child is much harder to remove than a dying wife alone." He paused before speaking again. "But there's something they don't know. If a court declares you unfit before the investors' meeting, your position as your father's successor could be challenged. Pray they never discover that." In that moment, Zola realized the truth. Kiera wasn't just a mistress. She was a rival playing a much bigger game. "When is the investors' meeting?" Zola asked. "The Halcyon Gala," Elias replied. "It's 9 days from now. The same night Adrian plans to announce his merger." A faint smile appeared on Zola's face. The very stage where Adrian planned to make his name would become the place where she took everything back. "Then we have 9 days, she said quietly. From that day on, she stopped staying silent in the way they expected. She didn't fight. She prepared. She collected every piece of evidence. The forged insurance documents. The bank records showing Ashford Capital financing Adrian's merger. Screenshots of Kiera's online posts with the dates clearly visible. The divorce papers. The custody filing. Then she found one final witness. The person no one had even thought about. Ruth. The housekeeper. Ruth came to the house twice every week. She saw everything. When she met Zola, tears filled her eyes. "Miss Zola," she said, holding both of her hands, "I have to tell you something." The day Kiera moved in. It wasn't sudden. Your mother-in-law and Kiera packed up your things a whole week before you came home. They even sold your bedroom furniture before you left the hospital. I heard them arranging everything with the movers. They planned it while you were still lying in your hospital bed. Zola stood completely still. It had never been an emotional decision. It had been planned from the very beginning. She wrote one more note in her notebook. Then, for the first time in a long while, she stopped being afraid of them. Yes. This will be the final part, and I'll keep it faithful to the original while using simple, natural English. 2 nights before the gala, Adrian walked into the garage. He crouched beside Zola's mattress. For the first time in a long while, his voice sounded almost gentle. The moment Zola heard that tone, she knew he wanted something. Sign the custody papers, Zola, he said. In your condition, you can't raise a child. Be reasonable. A clean break is better for everyone. Zola looked quietly at the man she had once loved. The man she had comforted through his hardest days. You forged my signature, Adrian, she said. You cancelled my medical insurance so my treatment would stop. So I would die sooner. Adrian's face stayed calm. Grief makes people imagine things, he replied smoothly. No one is going to believe a dying woman over me. Zola gave a small nod. Maybe you're right. She didn't sign a single paper. Adrian walked away, certain he had already won. He had always mistaken her silence for surrender. He had no idea what she would be carrying into the gala. Not just her unborn child. The truth. On the night of the gala, Zola finally opened the envelope her father had given her years before. Inside was one handwritten letter. It read, My dear daughter, if you're reading this, they have finally shown you who they really are. Good. Now you know the truth too. Everything I built was to make sure no one could ever throw you away. You were never small. They only needed you to believe you were. Walk into that room. Stand tall. Say your name. I'm still with you. Zola held the letter against her chest. She didn't cry. She put on her best dress. She tied a clean scarf over her head. She wore it like a crown. Then she called a car. It was time to take back what belonged to her. The halcyon gala sparkled with lights and luxury. Adrian stood proudly on the stage. Kiera stood beside him in a silver dress. Gloria and Renata chatted with guests while holding glasses of champagne. Adrian stepped up to the microphone. He spoke about success. He spoke about the future. He proudly announced the Meridian merger. Then he smiled. None of this would be possible without our financing partner, Ashford Capital, and the Bell Trust behind it. Tonight, we celebrate a new beginning. He spoke Cornelius Bell's name as if it belonged to him. Then the ballroom doors opened. Zola walked in. Her head was held high beneath her scarf. The room fell silent. Several investors recognized her immediately. They had known her father for years. 2 elderly businessmen stood up the moment they saw her. Adrian's smile disappeared. Zola, this is a private event. She looked directly at him. I'm exactly where I belong. Her voice was soft. But everyone listened. You just mentioned the Bell Trust. Would you like everyone here to know who owns it? Adrian couldn't answer. At that moment, Elias walked into the room carrying a folder. He faced the crowd. Ladies and gentlemen, he said, the legal successor to the Bell Trust, which owns Ashford Capital and controls the financing of this merger, is Mrs. Zola Bell. The room exploded with whispers. Zola stepped forward. My name is Zola Bell. My father, Cornelius Bell, built Ashford Capital. When he died, he left everything to me. She paused for a moment. Then she looked straight at Adrian. I am the woman behind the money you've been chasing all year. I am also the wife you threw into a garage while I was fighting cancer. A shocked silence filled the room. Adrian's face turned pale. You can't. I already have, Zola replied calmly. As of tonight, Ashford Capital withdraws its approval. The merger is over. It will never happen through you. Gloria quickly stepped forward. This is nonsense. She's sick. She's confused. She has no authority. Zola turned towards the guests. My husband filed for full custody of our unborn child. He wanted the court to declare me an unfit mother before tonight. He wanted to erase me. He simply didn't know what tonight really meant. Elias opened the folder. He also forged Mrs. Bell's signature to cancel her medical insurance. Here is the document. Here are the bank records. And here is the receipt showing that her bedroom furniture was sold a week before she even returned home from hospital. Zola looked at Adrian. The night you put me in the garage wasn't an emotional decision. It was planned. The ballroom became completely silent. Every excuse they had ever made disappeared. The evidence spoke for itself. Zola didn't smile. She didn't insult anyone. She simply let everyone see the truth. Then came another surprise. Kiera stepped forward. When Adrian reached for her hand, she pulled away. She lifted her chin. For the record, she said loudly, the custody case was Adrian's idea. The forged insurance papers were his idea too. He asked me to help him get rid of his wife quietly so the merger could go ahead. I still have every email. She looked at Zola. I won't pretend I had good intentions. I planned to use all of this myself. But I'm not going to prison for Adrian. She placed her phone on the table. Every email was there. Every instruction Adrian had written. His fraud had now been exposed in front of everyone. Adrian stood alone in the middle of the room. His mother slowly stepped away from him. His sister couldn't even look him in the eye. The people whose respect he had spent years trying to earn now looked at him with disgust. You were dying, Adrian whispered. I thought you were dying. Zola met his eyes. I may have been dying. But I was never yours to throw away. She didn't shout. She didn't cry. She simply turned around and walked out. Everyone watched her leave. The woman they had pitted walked away as the most powerful person in the room. Within a week, the merger collapsed. The forged insurance documents were handed over to the authorities. Fraud charges followed. The custody case disappeared the moment the truth about Zola became public. Adrian lost everything. He lost the merger. He lost the house. He lost the reputation he had traded his wife for. Gloria and Renata soon found that many people no longer welcomed them. Kiera avoided prison because she handed over all the evidence. But no respected company wanted to hire her again. Zola didn't waste her time watching their lives fall apart. She had better things to do. Her pregnancy remained healthy. And against all expectations, so did she. That winter, her medical scan brought the best news she could have hoped for. She was in remission. Now in charge of Ashford Capital, she honored her father's dream. She built the Cornelius Bell home. It was a clinic and shelter for women battling serious illnesses alone. It became a safe place for women whose families had abandoned them. Women who had been left in garages, cheap rooms, and forgotten corners simply because they became sick. At the Bell home, no woman was ever treated the way Zola had been. She hired kind nurses who stayed beside frightened patients through the night, just as she had once done. She paid for treatments that no forged signature could ever take away. At the entrance, she placed a small sign with her father's words. You were never small. They only needed you to believe you were. In the spring, Zola gave birth to a healthy baby girl. She named her Cordelia, in honor of her father, Cornelius. Some nights, after putting her daughter to sleep, Zola would sit quietly with her father's letter in her hands. She would remember the cold garage. The hard concrete floor. The laughter coming from the house that had once been hers. She had almost believed she was worthless. But all along, she had been the one holding everything together. She didn't cry. She smiled. Then she switched off the light. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like this video, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs to hear it. And before you go, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'll see you in the next unforgettable story.